The sky was clear. And yet, two aircraft were seconds from colliding. Both crews believed they were doing the right thing.
Descent. Descent. Descent.
The safety system designed to prevent this helped cause it. One aircraft was full of children on holiday. In less than 1 minute, aviation history changed forever.
Bro, hey with Charlie. Bro, hey with Charlie.
On the night of July 1st, 2002, two aircraft crossed paths above southern Germany. One was a cargo jet, flying through the darkness. The other was a passenger plane, carrying children on holiday. Both crews believed they were safely separated. Both trusted the systems guiding them through the night. They were wrong. At 35,000 feet, the sky was calm and clear. There was no storm, no turbulence, nothing to suggest that disaster was approaching. The passenger aircraft was a Russian-built Tupolev Tu-154. It was operating a charter flight from Moscow to Barcelona. On board were families, teachers, and school children. The children had earned the trip as a reward for academic success. For many of them, it was their first journey outside Russia. Inside the cabin, there was excitement. Laughter echoed through the aisles. Seatbelts were fastened. The journey ahead felt safe. The second aircraft was a Boeing 757 cargo jet. It was flying from Bergamo, Italy to Brussels, Belgium. Only two pilots were on board. Both aircraft were flying normally. Their engines were steady. Their instruments showed no abnormalities. Neither crew could see the other aircraft. At that altitude, pilots rely entirely on air traffic control and onboard collision avoidance systems. Those systems were designed to prevent exactly this situation. But far below, inside an air traffic control center in Switzerland, the system was already under strain. That night, only one controller was responsible for multiple sections of airspace. Several radar systems were offline for maintenance. Communication lines were limited. As the controller monitored his screens, two flight paths began to move closer together, slowly, silently, almost unnoticed. Above the town of Ubelingen, two aircraft were now converging toward the same point in the sky. No alarms had sounded yet. No urgent warnings had been issued, but the margin for error was shrinking. And the next decision, made in seconds, would change everything.
While the two aircraft continued on their routes, the danger was not in the sky. It was on the ground. Air traffic control for this region of Europe was handled by Skyguide, the Swiss air navigation service provider. Under normal conditions, several controllers would share the workload, monitoring traffic and cross-checking one another. But on this night, the system was operating under unusual strain. Planned maintenance had reduced radar capability. Some systems were unavailable. Others were operating in a limited mode. Telephone lines used to coordinate with neighboring control centers were also affected. These limitations were known. They were considered manageable. What was not expected was how much responsibility would fall on one person. Only one controller was working the airspace above southern Germany. His colleague was on a scheduled break. Dozens of aircraft were moving through the sector, each at high speed, each requiring constant monitoring. At cruising altitude, aircraft cover great distances in minutes. A small delay in recognition can quickly become a serious problem. As the controller scanned his radar display, most aircraft appeared well separated. Altitude differences looked safe. Flight paths seemed predictable. But two radar symbols were beginning to tell a different story. They were still far apart. There was no immediate alarm. Yet their projected paths were slowly drifting toward the same point. The controller had seconds, not minutes, to notice the conflict. And as his attention shifted between aircraft, the window for early intervention began to close. High above him, the two crews remained unaware. Their instruments were steady, their flights felt routine, but the system designed to keep them apart was quietly approaching its limit. And the next phase of this flight would depend on one voice and one decision. High above Europe, Bashkirian Airlines Flight 2937 continued its journey west. The Tupolev Tu-154 cruised smoothly through the night sky. Inside the cockpit, the flight crew followed standard procedures. The captain monitored the instruments. The first officer handled communications. Everything appeared normal. The aircraft had already climbed to its assigned cruising altitude. Fuel flow was stable. Weather conditions were favorable. There was no reason for concern. Behind the cockpit door, the passenger cabin was calm. Teachers moved quietly through the aisles. Children spoke softly or rested in their seats. Some stared out of the windows, watching the darkness below. Others talked about the beaches of Spain in the days ahead. For many of them, this journey represented adventure and freedom. The crew had completed countless similar flights. Charter operations were routine. The route was familiar. Air traffic control instructions had been clear and consistent. Nothing suggested that the flight was approaching danger. But at cruising altitude, pilots cannot see other aircraft. They rely entirely on instructions from the ground and onboard safety systems. Those systems were functioning, at least they appeared to be. As Flight 2937 moved steadily westward, another aircraft was approaching from the opposite direction. Neither crew was aware of the other's presence. Their paths were still separated. Their altitudes appeared safe. Yet unseen, the distance between them was closing, and the silence inside the cockpit was about to be broken. Inside the cockpit, everything feels normal. The aircraft cruises smoothly through the night. Instruments glow softly. The engines maintain a steady, reassuring hum. In the cabin behind the flight deck, children sleep against window panels, clutching souvenirs from their school trip. Teachers move quietly through the aisle, careful not to wake them. Outside, the sky is empty. Then just after 11:40 p.m., a chime cuts through the calm. The traffic collision avoidance system activates. Traffic, traffic. The voice is calm, mechanical, certain. The pilots of the Tupolev Tu-154 look outside instinctively. Darkness, stars, nothing else. No aircraft lights, no sense of danger. But the system has already seen what human eyes cannot. Moments later, the command sharpens. Descend! Descend! The routine flight is no longer routine. Seconds now carry weight. Inside the Tupolev cockpit, the crew hesitates. Their training tells them that air traffic control comes first. Automation assists, but humans decide. The TCAS command continues. Descend! Descend! Then finally, a radio call breaks through. Air traffic control instructs the Tupolev to descend. The captain complies immediately. The aircraft begins its descent. What the crew does not know is that this instruction is incomplete. Inside the Boeing 757, TCAS issues the opposite command. Climb! Climb! That crew responds instantly, increasing thrust, climbing as trained. Two aircraft. Two correct procedures. One shared mistake. In the cabin of the Tupolev, a child stirs in sleep as the aircraft gently changes pitch. Seatbelts remain fastened. No one senses danger. The closing speed is now catastrophic, over 1,000 kilometers per hour. night sky provides no warning until the final moment. TCAS alerts grow more urgent, repeating commands, arriving seconds too late to change the outcome. At 11:43 p.m. over southern Germany, the trajectories intersect. The Tupolev's vertical stabilizer slices through the Boeing's fuselage. There is no mayday call, no scream, no time. Both aircraft disintegrate in midair. Children who fell asleep dreaming of home never wake. On the radar screen, 2 targets vanish. The controller calls both aircraft. No response. Emergency services race toward multiple impact sites. Debris rains across fields and forests. Wreckage lies scattered over kilometers. In nearby villages, families sleep, unaware that lives have just fallen from the sky around them. Among the victims are dozens of children returning from their school trip. Their teachers stayed with them until the very end. Entire families will wake to a world permanently changed. The investigation uncovers not one failure, but many. Only one controller was on duty. Critical alert systems were disabled. Instructions were delayed. And most fatally, human commands contradicted automated warnings. The conclusion is clear. When TCAS issues a command, it must be obeyed immediately, without question. This rule is rewritten into global aviation law. It will save lives, but it comes too late for those lost. Today, every pilot learns the same rule. When TCAS speaks, pilots obey. The sky is safer now because of what happened that night. But safety has a cost. 171 people boarded 2 aircraft expecting an ordinary flight home. Children dreamed of seeing their families again. They never arrived. In aviation, silence is never empty. It carries memory, it carries warning, and it carries the voices of those who never made it home.